folks, let's get on with things. Oh, that one's gone. Those two working all right? Good. Not that I can do much about it, but hey. Okay, right. Today we're going to be looking at issues to do with communications, ways of using our seminars more effectively, and tutorials. Now, you're getting fairly experienced, I guess, at seminars and at least the tutorial side, but it won't hurt to cover it. And again, most of this stuff comes from the Lowe's, Peters and et al. Book, the How to Study at Universities in England, or Britain. And although the book is aimed at people coming from overseas, it actually is incredibly valuable for everybody because it helps you transition from school and college anywhere in the world into what we expect you to do here in the University of Derby. I think you're probably going to be doing presentations fairly soon, are you not? Have any of your modules identified presentations as being necessary in the next few weeks or this next term? Because if not, they probably will do in one way or another. It also helps you in terms of understanding how to construct your the communication you build into your formal reports. It asks you questions. Remember, questions are the most important things because they help you to actually challenge what you're doing in order to deliver the best possible result. And although the communication bit is about presentations, you will also see that it fits in rather nicely to how you focus your articles that you're all writing for this module. And I'll also say, look at seminars and tutorials. What's the best way of getting most value out of what we can provide you as academics to you as students trying to get the best value, the best help that we can give you. Lowe's, Peters and Turner, chapter 6 is what it provides the background to what I'm covering today. So, the communications. If you think about what you do when you're talking with people, or when you're writing your assignment, your articles, your reports, creating presentations, broadly speaking, there are two different things that you might be trying to do. Either you are going to try and just provide some information to inform your listener, to provide information. Stuff that you think is real cool, or that's really interesting, that you came across listening to the radio, watching TV, reading the newspaper, reading a book, or just whatever you've been doing that suddenly you found this really cool piece of information. All the sorts of things I came across while I was in that conference, or the two conferences last week. Lots of it was really, really cool. And I'll be actually talking to you about some of those things when I do my slot in the Introduction to Computer Science in a couple of 3 weeks' time. All about analytics, big data, and there's so much going on that's really, really fun, really interesting. And I want to inform you about what I saw there. But I might also try to persuade. In your articles, you're doing both informing your readers, your friends, your families, and those who are going to read it out there once it gets published on the open journal system we have, but you're also probably going to want to persuade people that your topic is really, really interesting. This is why you want to do computer networks and security, computer forensics, investigation, computer science, computer games programming, or IT, information technology. All those topics that you've got that you're beginning to focus on with your articles, which you're submitting on Friday, you're informing and actually going to be persuading people. So, what's Thursday? Bother. Anyway. As you think about communications, there are 4 very, very fundamental questions which will help you focus what you write, what you say, in a way that will have maximum impact. And you'll see each of those 4 statements are in 2 parts. One has to do with what I would like to do, but the other part, which is actually much more important, is what do I actually need to do to convey my message. So the first question is about what I want to say, the content. And generally speaking, once we've done the research and understood what it's all about, we have far more to say than we can possibly fit in. So then, you have to apply a filter. What is it that I actually need to say to get that message across clearly, concisely, to inform, and hopefully to be able to persuade? So, what do I want to say? That's a whole big area. And then what do I need to say? A small, focused element. The second question to think about, other than the content, the what, is the reason. Why do I want to say it? Filtered into, why do I need to say it? Because that begins to get at the nub of the question of, how do I persuade you? How do you persuade me, your audience? Then the third question is about your audience. Who do I want to say it to, and who do I need to say it to? And they may again be 2 totally different audiences. One in terms of the broader picture of information, informing people, or I need to say it to 2 or 3 people who are critical in terms of making some sort of decision that I would like made by those readers. And then the final bit is about how much time have I got? How much time do I actually need? And trying to bring those 2 together. Or it might be, how many pages have I got? And how do I fit it into that 3 pages of content that you guys have got for your article? So all of those 4 questions start off with what I'd love to be able to do, and I might like to spend an hour and a half on this lecture. But I've only got an hour, actually about 50 minutes. So I've got to think very carefully about what I pull into this, so that I can really get the message over about how to communicate, how to focus, and even give you a little opportunity shortly to have a little discussion. Now, we also have to differentiate between the topic, the content, and the aim, what I want to achieve. And, this is going to be very, very important all the way through your academic career here at the University of Derby, but it also becomes absolutely crucial as you start moving out into your placement jobs, your workplace, and then into your jobs in the future. because we tend to get confused often about the difference between the content, the what, and the why. And we see it very regularly in the final year as you start defining your dissertation topic. What is the topic area of your dissertation, the area that you want to research on? And some of my students in the final year are researching the question of how accurate is location services in terms of our smart devices. But the aim, which is what they want to achieve if they do a successful project, is to identify the level of inaccuracy within location services on our happy little mobile devices. So one is the topic area. I want to investigate aspects relating to location services, but the aim is to find out just how accurate or inaccurate they are. So aim is why and what I want to achieve, but the title or the topic is the what it's all about. So take a little example that is kind of appropriate to all of us here in the field of computer science and information technology. The question is, I want to do a presentation on a software package that I like. Or you want to do a presentation on a software package that you like. One that you think is really cool, or maybe a mobile app that you think is really magical. So the topic is the software, the app, what it can do for you, and often the aim will just be to describe what it does and why it's great fun. Just information. The second alternative is a question that I could pose to all of you. Do you trust the internet? So the presentation itself might be all about how the internet works and the way that its security works or doesn't work, as the case may be. And given that something like 800 million sets of identity have been stolen from internet servers over the less than 12 months, it's kind of interesting how insecure the internet really is. 800 million sets of ID. And there's only about 4 or 5 billion people using the internet, so that's about 15 to 20% of everybody using the internet has had their identity stolen this year. So I would then probably be giving a presentation like that or a talk like that to persuade people that they need to be pretty careful how they use the internet, how they use their mobile devices, how they connect their smart devices to Wi-Fi connections at Costa. Unsecured Wi-Fi connections. So that would be very much aiming to persuade you that you need to change your behavior perhaps, or at least to behave in a particular way so that your IDs that you use on the internet are safe and not stolen. So the difference between informing, hey, this is cool, it's great, to, hey guys, you've got to do something different. Or if you're already working like that, you need to carry on being even more careful. It is almost always very, very easy to choose your topic area. It's something that you feel is real cool, or else it's set for you as an assignment topic. Thinking about the aim, however, does tend to be a little bit more complicated. Because you need to think about the question, what am I trying to achieve in doing this presentation? And so what you need to think about is this thing called the specific purpose statement. It's a thing that you would put, the words you put after this little phrase, by the end of my talk, the audience will ... Now, you've all seen, I trust, the module specifications for the modules you're taking this term. And in each of those modules, specifications, you will see a little section called Learning Outcomes. These are the 2 or 3 or 4 specific purpose statements for the module. At the end of this module, you will be able to do A, B, C, and D, the specific purpose statements. And if you can create a really snappy, short sentence that describes what your audience, your readers, will be able to do or will think at the end of your presentation, or after they've read your article or your report, then you've got a really good specific purpose statement which captures the aim of what you want the audience or readership to do as a result of reading or hearing your presentation. So what I want you to do for the next 5-10 minutes, let's just see how much time we've got. Yeah, 5-10 minutes. In small groups of those around you, behind you, in front of you, or beside you, I want you to think about this question of, do I trust the internet? And if you start with those words, by the end of my talk, the audience will, ... What is going to be your specific purpose statement for a talk? So there's a 10-minute talk that you're going to produce about, do I trust the internet? Okay? Get discussing, guys, and come up and make some notes about what you think is going to be your specific purpose statement. Right. So, what sort of phrases have you in your discussion come up with as your, by the end of my talk, the audience will, ... in relation to trusting the internet? Ideas, guys. Vote. What do you come up with?
Be able to determine what security threats there are online and additionally work out to combat.
To be able to identify the types of security threats online and identify perhaps ways of blocking those, obviating them. Yep, that's one. Who else has got a good idea? Or have you all come up with exactly the same one? To understand the risks of putting personal information on the internet. And would that relate to things like putting a date of birth and your gender and a few other interesting things on Facebook and LinkedIn?
No, more in depth.
More in depth than that. What other things would you include as well as those?
Photographs, bank details.
Sorry? Oh, photographs, bank details. Names and addresses, yeah. Right. Just think about what bits of your identity are needed to successfully steal your identity. You basically need your date of birth, an address, your postal address, and your full name. And that kind of starts the ball rolling. If you then start publishing your mobile phone numbers online that people can get at them, then they've got almost everything they need to actually cause you a lot of trouble. You don't need to tell them your bank details. They can track that down comparatively easily. They can certainly divert your bank cards. If you ask for a new bank card, they can divert that very, very easily if you're not very careful. If you just put those few items of information. What other sort of points came out of your discussion? So you're all really saying personal information is kind of difficult on the internet. Put too much there, too many photos, that's dead easy for someone else to pretend to be you. We saw a poor minister of the government who got himself into trouble because he thought he'd set up an online chat with a pretty girl whose photo had been stolen. She was an actress, and someone had nicked that as a reporter and was pretending to be someone he wasn't, and caused the guy to have to resign. I mean, it was silly, but still, it's so easy to get into trouble on the internet because of the lack of security, because we don't know who's at the other end. It's kind of difficult to trust people online often. So by the end of my talk, the audience will understand effectively how insecure the internet is and why it's dangerous to publish too much of your own private information online. A possible succinct way of stating the aim of that talk. I think you guys have come up with some better ones. So the next part of thinking about communication is understanding your audience. Because you need to communicate to them in the way that they will understand. It is no good saying, oh, they didn't get my message, that's their problem. If people don't get your message, that is your problem. You have to understand your audience well enough that you use the language and the ideas that they associate with. And that we've seen over the last, I guess, a year or two, that government ministers or politicians keep saying, oh, well, our audience doesn't understand our message. As though it's the audience's problem. They're too thick, or they don't understand logic, or they don't understand where we're trying to go. But surely, politicians above all ought to understand the fact that communication is their problem. They have got to use language and ideas and concepts which their audience understand and associate with. If a politician cannot get their message across, they have failed fundamentally as communicators. And in the same way, as you write your article for that Computers for Everyone magazine, you need to think about who your audience is. They are not technical. They are your friends and families in essence. However, for some of your other assignments, in other modules, you're writing for a technical audience. People who understand much of what you're writing about. So you will change the way that you communicate, the words you use, the terms you use. You might even use some jargon, the internal phrases and words which are special to computer forensics investigation or networks and security, computer science, computer games programming, or information technology, informatics, analytics. So you have to think ever so carefully about your audience so that you can ask these sort of questions. Because that, the type of audience fundamentally changes the way you write and the way that you speak. So, a couple of minutes, again, thinking, talking with your group, in your little groups, just a couple of minutes this time. Which bits of your communication will change depending on the type of audience? And it will also change depending on your aim, which was to either to inform or to persuade. Okay, a couple of minutes, guys. Okay. So what parts of your communication, your writing, your speaking will change dependent on your audience?
The language and
The language and words
words.
you use, yeah. In what sort of way?
Well, you wouldn't really be using like a lot of slang and stuff if you were speaking to a audience that wasn't very technically literate. And if you would, you'd probably have to explain that.
Yes, I mean in a formal communication, a formal presentation, you certainly wouldn't use slang. In a formal presentation to or writing to the people who are not technical experts, you wouldn't use jargon. So yeah, that's a good point.
Mannerism?
In what sort of way do you mean mannerisms?
Like if you was talking to us, it'd be more casual. You might even throw in a swear word or two.
You might not use swear words in a sort of formal situation, or even informal, except in one-to-one you might do, depending. But yeah, okay.
Structure.
What do you mean by structure? But yes.
Well, for example, if you were writing an article that was meant to persuade someone, I'd use personally like quick points to try and sway the audience towards the message I was trying to get across. Whereas if it was to inform, I'd probably use more listed information because you could get more instances of your ideas out of that.
So for informing, you provide more little case studies and examples, whereas if you're persuading, you'll be careful to choose mostly those examples which prove your point or support your point. Yeah. Now be careful in an academic assignment where we want you to do critical evaluation, which means comparing and contrasting, which means you need to think about both those examples which support your case and those examples which appear not to support your case, in fact maybe argue against your case, but you then need to provide that logic that shows why that one is wrong and the one that supports your case is right. So yeah, good thinking. Any other ideas? So other things you need to be thinking about, what's their background knowledge? How much do they know about the topic area? Basically people come to read something or to listen to a presentation because they want to learn something new. So you've got to kind of think about what do they already know and what value can I add by giving some new stuff that they've never come across. Yeah, those examples, they help to maintain the level of interest. Now sometimes it might even be useful to actually give a little brief summary of what you think they know so that you can actually check out where they're starting from. So you don't cover stuff they already know and get bored with, or you don't start too far into the subject so they're kind of left floundering because they don't actually know what on earth you're talking about. So you've got to think very carefully about how you introduce it. You've got to think about what will keep them interested, what are they wanting to find out, what's going to be relevant, and why is it relevant to them. But above all, if you said it's a 5-minute presentation, or you've been told you've got 5 minutes, keep to 5 minutes. If you've got 20 minutes, keep to 20 minutes. If you've got 3 pages, you give them 3 pages. That's what you've got to do in terms of the content. Time limit is really important, so it might mean you have to practice on practice if you're giving a presentation. So you actually get it down to that 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, because you probably, if you've done a good piece of research, has so much that that 20 minutes can become 30 or 40 minutes. And at the conference I was chairing over in the States last week, on Saturday and Sunday, there are one or two academics who are so carried away by the message they've got, the real cool things they've discovered, the things they want to tell us about teaching analytics. There are one or two people who went way, way over their 15-minute slot, just because they got so much to tell. Now, as it happened, that wasn't a problem, because that was quite useful, because what they had to say was so interesting that we actually wanted to hear it all. But generally, you don't have that freedom. And you will be cut off at a particular time. Like I get cut off here at about 7 minutes to the hour, because we've got to zap you all as you walk out, and it takes quite a few minutes. So I have to run to a very, very tight schedule here. And at the moment, we currently have about 7 or 8 minutes to go. Which is just about right, because here I want to move into the seminars and tutorials side, having covered how to work out what you want to say and then what you need to say, how much time you've got versus how much you need to have, and all those other things. Focus, 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 to be as persuasive or as informative as you possibly can. Now we move on to seminars, which are all about group discussions. And yes, we need those examples, but we then need to take them to a deeper level to understand what's going on in the topic area that the seminar is all about. And there'll be more seminars coming along over the next few months, next year or two, as you develop. And we're actively trying to explore ideas. We're trying to have an open mind in the sense of being receptive to new ideas, and yet to critically evaluate them so that we don't just accept everything that comes along, however ridiculous it might be. The whole point of seminars and a lot of workshops is to share your developing knowledge. Share the results of some of that research you're putting in, because if you give someone some ideas, they almost certainly are going to be giving you other ideas, so that we multiply the value of our research. We multiply the value of our thinking. And the number of times people say, oh, I never thought of that. The number of times when I'm discussing things with my colleagues. The number of times when I'm discussing things with you guys. You contribute as much to my developing understanding often as talking to my colleagues. Because you're doing extra research that I don't have time to do, that my colleagues don't have time to do, and you're coming up with real cool ideas. And it's kind of wow sometimes. And seminars really work well when you are thinking deeply about what you're hearing and what you've read. And remember, at a seminar, each of us has 2 eyes and 2 ears to receive information and knowledge, and 1 mouth to transmit. So in a sense, you could say we should be receiving 4 times as much knowledge as we're trying to transmit. A 4-to-1 ratio is probably a great way of thinking about using seminars, using discussions, even those little discussions that you're having just now. 4-to-1, listen and read and see, and just 1 for talking and transmitting. And enjoy yourself. Hey, learning is fun. Before you go into a workshop or into a seminar, do the reading. Don't do what that student, finally a student I heard about 6, 7, 8 years ago, who when asked why she hadn't prepared for a particular seminar in her final year, came out with, I didn't come to university to read. What on earth had she come to university for? The clue is in the fact that we go up to university to read computer science or a subject. So it's researching, reading, thinking, analysing, try to, in your preparation, to have something to contribute. Something that leapt out at you as you did your research and your reading. What was that interesting fact? Because it may well not have occurred to anybody else. And that contribution could be absolutely vital in developing the flow of the discussion. And while you are listening, don't just act like a sponge and just absorb it all. Compare and contrast it with other things that are being said, have just been said, and your understanding and your knowledge that you've built up over the last few years. Because you may find, as you actively think during listening, that that's funny. I need to ask a question, maybe to get the person to expand on what they're talking about, or to rethink what they've just said. The idea is for you to learn from each other, as well as from whoever's leading the seminar, the lecturer, the tutor. So, some ideas for preparation. Thinking about the topic, the subject. What do you already know? What do you think you know? Check it out. What is your active research going to be about those things you don't already know? Because you're wanting to learn. You're wanting to share your developing learning with those around you. Work with a friend. The whole point of being here is to work in groups, develop your ideas, discuss outside the lectures, discuss outside the seminars, the workshop, and just share ideas. One of the things I found most fascinating when I was at university, 40 odd years ago now, and some, it was the fact that I had access to my friends who were studying law and ancient English. They were studying biology, they were studying engineering, maths, computing. It was an incredible environment to find out about every sort of thing under the sun. Because that was what that university was all about. Connecting ideas which didn't seem to connect, or at least hadn't seemed to connect before you got into that discussion. In terms of etiquette, don't just try and dive in. I keep trying to dive in because I've got so many bright ideas, I think. And yet I have to rein myself back and think, oh, hang on, no, someone's talking, there's a gap, let someone else have a go, otherwise I'll just take over the whole thing. And there are people who do that, and I'm sometimes, unfortunately, a bit like that. I have to always remind myself to listen, 4 to 1. Wait for those gaps. Keep to the point. Don't try and bring in all of those lovely ideas, those lovely examples that you read just yesterday that will probably bore the pants off everybody else. Keep to the point. Keep the focus. Make eye contact. If you've got an audience, don't just look at the floor, don't look at the ceiling. Look at people. Make sure that you maintain eye contact with different people so they feel they are part of the discussion. And the same goes in seminars. Make sure you keep eye contact with people as you talk to them or as you talk to the group. If you're talking to the group, you need to look at different people so they feel part of what you're saying. And remember, you don't want to ask questions which are quite obvious, yes or no. You're trying to ask questions which lead into a longer explanation. So why, or how, or what, or when are much better in terms of developing the discussion than ones where the person who can answer says, yes, okay, and? The conversation, the discussion stops dead at a yes or a no question. So that really leads us to exactly the right time, folks. You might ask, how do I do it? Well, I've only been doing this job for, 13 odd years, something 12, 13 years, so one kind of gets used to doing something like this on the fly. So thank you very much. I will see all of you tomorrow, folks. Stop! I will see all of you tomorrow in the workshop sessions, and I will be able to cast my eye over every single one of your articles to give you feedback so that you can improve it. Okay? Wait to be zapped.